This conference will now be recorded.
So I'd like to resume this regular council meeting of Monday, May the 11th. Just to note, we're meeting by electronic means as authorized by the Ministerial Order M139. I'd like to read the acknowledgement of our traditional territory. We acknowledge that we are gathered here on the traditional territory of the Secwepemc people, with whom we share these lands and where we live and we work together. Council, you have a agenda in front of you. I'll just check with staff first and see if there's any additions to the agenda.
Your Worship, there is one item from staff, which is a letter under item 10.1, ZON 1174, a letter from the applicant, which we've distributed.
Okay, thank you. And I see Mr. Gunther is on here as well. So thank you very much. Is there any other additions from staff?
None others from staff, Your Worship.
Okay. The motion that we released from in camera, is there a place on this agenda we're going to speak to that too?
Yes, that will be under other business.
Okay, what number is that? Okay, number 19?
Yes, number 19.
Okay, and those motions will appear at that time. All right, thank you. Councillors, do you have any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll ask if there's any disclosure of interest. I see Councillor Wallace Richmond has a conflict of interest on item 12.2, so she'll be leaving that item. Is there any other conflict of interest for councillors? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into our agenda. So we'll start with our confirmation of minutes. The first one is 6-1 regular council meeting minutes of April the 27th. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Flynn, seconded by Councillor Lavery, that the regular council meeting minutes of April 27, 2020 be adopted as circulated.
Thank you. Are there any additions or omissions to those minutes? Before I call the question, councillors. All right, please indicate if you are opposed to that motion. Nobody opposed, that motion carries unanimously. We now have the confirmation of minutes of the special council meeting of May the 4th. That's item 6.2. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Wallace Richmond, seconded by Councillor Cannon, that the special council meeting minutes of May 4th, 2020 be adopted as circulated.
Are there any additions or omissions to that motion? Okay, please indicate if you're not in favor. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Welcome back, Councillor Lindgren. Councillor Lindgren, can you hear me? Okay, great. Councillor Lindgren, we just did the disclosure of interest. Are there any items that you have a disclosure of interest on?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move forward then to item 7.1. That's committee reports, Development Planning Services Committee meeting minutes of May the 4th. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Lavery, seconded by Councillor Eliason, that the Development and Planning Services Committee meeting minutes of May 4th, 2020 be received as information.
Any omissions or additions to those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. If you're opposed, please indicate. See no opposition, that motion passes unanimously. Item 8 is Columbia Schwab Regional District update. We don't have an informational piece, but we'll give our reps an opportunity, either Councillor Flynn or Eliason, if you have anything to share from the CSRD.
Your Worship, the CSRD board meeting isn't until next Thursday. We are having an informal discussion tomorrow on messaging to the potential traveling public, just being consistent with the province's message, I believe, but we are going to have a discussion about that and release something through the media with regards to that tomorrow. And as I said, I suspect it'll be consistent with government messaging. That was part of the reason I asked Selena Robinson when she spoke to stay in your region, what did she mean? I said, do you mean Interior Health Region? Do you mean Columbia Shuswap Regional District? Do you mean the Okanagan region? And clearly, as you heard, the province is not willing to put a distance or time traveled on that. But kind of the message I heard was if you have to go back home at night or should be able to go back home in the same day you travel is what I thought I heard, but they won't come out and give us clear guidance. So in absence of clear guidance, we as the regional district are going to come up with a media release for tomorrow afternoon.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that information. Okay, we'll move on to staff reports. Item 9.1, Director of Engineering and Public Works Tender Award 2020 Paving Program. If I could have a mover and a seconder for that. By Councillor Cannon. Seconded by Councillor Wallace Richmond. Thank you. Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the report is basically the award for the annual paving program. We have a total of $1.4 million in our budget. That's a slight carry forward from last year. And the paving prices came in approximately 25% lower than anticipated. So we should be able to get more asphalt overlay works done for the dollars that we have. I'm open for questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that's certainly good news. Questions for the Director of Engineering and Public Works? Any comments by council? Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, and I apologize if there's a little background noise. My son's having a shower in the room beside where I'm sitting. So the report shows $1,263,000 is the tendered amount. The Director of Engineering and Public Works said 1.4 was in the budget. Are we planning to spend the full budget and get more done? Or is this getting more done than we expected with that 25% savings?
Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Your Worship, it's a bit of both. We intend to spend the 1.4 and we should get substantially more asphalt overlay work done or completed for that amount.
Well, COVID has some good news, and I support us spending what was budgeted and taking advantage of the significantly lower fuel prices. Not sure they'll stay low like they are, so we know our roads, we could spend double what we're spending, and I support spending the full budget and doing as much as we can with regards to this specific issue.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Any other comments? I'll call a question then. All those in favor, please indicate on the chat line. It is unanimous. All councillors are in favor. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 9.2, Director of Engineering and Public Works, Zone 1 Canoe Beach Water Main Upgrade. We have a proposed motion. CAO, do we have a mover and a seconder for that motion?
This is for item 9.2.
Yes.
Yes, we need a mover and seconder.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Eliason and Councillor Cannon. Director of Engineering and Public.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is a fairly major project which was approved in the budget for this year. We had in 2017, we had two major failures in this pipe, and we are looking to drill a new pipe in its current location. It is our main feed line from our water treatment plant to the Zone 1 system. And this section that is planned to repair is basically from Captain's Cove Marina to Canoe Beach lease lots. Everything is in place. What we are looking for is a slight increase in the budget, slight increase in the overall scheme of the budget of $50,000, which we would be looking at relocating from another project, another approved project, the Zone 2 pump station design project.
Great,
I'm
thank
open
you.
to any questions.
Questions, Councillor Flynn.
My question is for the CAO. I'm not in conflict on the first motion. I'm not in conflict on the second, but staff is recommending on the third that one of my clients get that piece of it. Should I step out for everything, or should I ask you to split it and I can vote on the first two?
We'll ask the CAO
You
his
should
advice.
ask for it to be split.
Okay, I did send that message to the mayor, and now that you've confirmed that, Your Worship, can we split it?
Yes, we'll do the first that and the second and that together, and we'll have discussion on that, and then we'll ask you to leave and we'll do the third part. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
Do you have any comments on the first two pieces, Councillor Flynn? Seeing none, Councillor Lindgren, you have a question?
I do, thank you. The CAO mentioned that we would transfer the money from another approved project in the amount of $50,000. Does that mean the other approved project will not happen, or is that there's an excess of money there for that project?
Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Thank you, Worship. In answer to that question, there was actually an error in the carry forwards from last year, and $50,000 was carried forward into this particular Zone 2 pump station account, which didn't need to be there. So we actually had a surplus.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Can I just ask the Director of Engineering and Public Works, the technology we used on the foreshore trail was to coat the inside of that pipe. Is this the same technology, or it sounds a bit different?
Yes, Your Worship. They're two different, they're called Trenchless Technologies. The one at the foreshore, we actually used a fiberglass sock, which was put into the existing pipe, and then it was expanded and cured in place. So you're using the existing pipe. This one, we're actually drilling in a second pipe. So we're going to be drilling the entire length because it is in the foreshore. It's environmentally sensitive area. So we'll be staging at either end at Canoe Beach and at Captain's Cove Marina for the drill.
And that pipe is separate from the pipe that's there now?
That's correct.
Okay, I understand. Thank you very much. Any other questions? I'll call the question then. Please indicate your vote. All those in favor. Great, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll now go to item 9.3, Acting Chief Financial Officer, 2020 Budget Analysis, COVID-19. We do have a proposed motion.
Your Worship, you skipped past the split out motion.
Oh, thank you.
That's correct.
I'm going to leave now, even though I need to stay to keep you on track, but I'm going to leave.
Well, thank you. Don't slip in the shower. Sorry about that, and thanks for the reminder. So the last and that, do we need a different mover and seconder, or can we use the one that we already had?
We just used the same one, Your Worship.
Great, thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions on the third and that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Please indicate in favor or opposed. Great, thank you. Noted that Councillor Flynn did not vote on that piece. That passes unanimously. Now we will move to 9.3, which is Acting Chief Financial Officer 2020 Budget Analysis, COVID-19. We have a proposed motion. I'd ask the CAO to read that proposed motion because I don't think we have it in writing.
Your Worship, the proposed motion is that council approve the recommendations to park the projects as outlined in the report from the acting CFO dated May 7th, 2020. And I would envision, Your Worship, that council would then go on to make amendments after that.
Thank you. I see it's moved by Councillor Lavery and seconded by Councillor Eliason. Thank you. I'll ask the Chief Financial Officer to review the report for us.
Thank you, Your Worship. So further to Council's request, this report summarizes revenues and expenses for 2020 in relation to the current COVID-19 pandemic. The report gives an overview of the steps that Council has already taken, as well as possible future steps. Under expenses, a list of major maintenance projects and capital projects has been provided as projects that could be temporarily parked should there be a reduction in cash flow as a result of reduced property tax collections. The second is a list of events, two of which have already been canceled by the organizer that may result in funding not being required from the city. The third list is transfers to reserves that are included in the 2020 budget that could be removed, deferred, or reallocated back to the emergency reserve account. The fourth list details out operating and maintenance contracts that the city holds with various organizations that could be reviewed. However, there are contractual obligations to consider. Under revenue, the city may see a decrease in revenues for such items as parking fees, burning permits, dog licenses, fines, rentals, leases, etc. An estimated decrease of approximately 15% would amount to $63,500. Should the city see an additional 10% of property taxes remain uncollected for the 2020 year, the municipal property tax reduction would be $1,861,422. The province has taken steps to help municipalities with cash flow. They have deferred the school tax payments to December the 31st of 2020, and they have allowed the cities to borrow from reserve funds with a 5-year repayment plan. The city also has a revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw adopted by council. However, staff do not envision that the bylaw will be necessary. We may need to borrow temporarily from our reserve accounts until the revised tax due date of September the 30th, 2020. With the possible reduction in revenues, temporary borrowing from reserve accounts, expense savings from reduced workforce, and parked projects, the city is sitting in a good financial position to move forward through the current COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you very much. Could I just ask you, Tracy, just to review the very last schematic you have there on the page now, so that everybody understands all the figures and where they come from?
The graph at the end of the report?
Yes, the one that starts with possible revenue shortfall increase. It's on the screen presently.
Okay, so the first line indicates the possible reduction of property tax collection of the 1.86 million. So that's if an additional 10% of property taxes remains unpaid at the due date. Potential fees, rents, permits, reduction in revenues of 63,500. The borrowing from reserve accounts or the revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw would allow us to borrow up to $1 million or more if we were borrowing from reserve accounts and not through the anticipation borrowing bylaw. The savings through reduced expenses include the hiring freeze, which was already in place, which has saved the city approximately $238,000. Part-time and relief layoff. My number is based on approximately 3 months of $99,000, which has already been approved by the council. And the parked projects total that is in the first couple of graphs, the total is $756,430, which would leave the city in a surplus of $170,000 approximately.
Great, thank you very much. So councillors, I will open it up to you for questions first, and then after questions, if there's any comments. So please indicate if you do have questions. Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks, Your Worship. So one of the parked projects is $200,000 for asphaltic overlays. Sorry, I'm trying to scroll up on the screen. I have no control over that one. I'm just wondering if that's the same $200,000 that we just talked about that brings our budget up to 1.4 million, or if this is in excess of that.
Chief Financial Officer.
I'm just opening up my budget. If you can just give me 1 second.
No problem.
The asphaltic overlays has an approved budget of 1.367 for the regular and an additional 200,000 on top of that. So the 1.4 would be close to the original 1.376 that was approved. Sorry, does that clarify the question?
Yes, it
Okay,
does. And that,
currently,
sorry, go ahead, Councillor Lindgren.
currently we just awarded a contract of substantially less than that, 1.2 something, I think it was. So that would still fit into that budget, correct?
Yes, that was correct.
You might recall at the budget time where the asphaltic overlays budget is from the taxes on lots, and then council decided to put $200,000 extra into that account. So that is a $200,000 that's in that particular schematic.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn.
Sorry, Your Worship. My question was the exact same question, and I still don't feel like I have an understanding of the answer. So asphaltic overlays came in under budget. We just approved, what was that number, 1.27 or something? Sorry, flipping back. 1.263, 910 was the tender amount by Okanagan Aggregates. Does that include the 200, or are we spending, if we park the 200, we don't get the extra? I'm totally confused now, but I was going to ask the same question as Councillor Lindgren, and the answer just confused me more. Sorry.
Okay. So the 1.263 bid by Okanagan Aggregates that we just accepted, the budget line for that item was 1.4 million. And so what the Director of Engineering and Public Works said was the difference between the two, we're going to get an extra $140,000 of asphaltic overlays. Those two pieces of money are different than the $200,000 for asphaltic overlays additional.
Okay, so now I think I understand. We're getting extra work done with the 130,000 approximately savings. We're going to spend the 1.4, but the 1.4 does not include the 200.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. That's how I now understand it?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay, and if we're waiting for comments or things to be pulled out, I will wait. But I will say, before, just a short comment, be careful what you ask for, because I asked for this, and what an amazing job by staff. That's my only comment for now. I'll wait for other comments.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. I'll just see if there's any other questions from any other councillor before we go to comments. Okay, I see none. So Councillor Flynn, we'll open up with your comments, and then Councillor Elias.
What was that?
Okay.
Sorry.
Flynn?
Okay, so do we need a mover and a seconder? I guess not.
It was already moved and seconded.
Okay, so all I will say again is thank you, Tracy, very much. Your title might say acting, but boy, what a great memo, what a great report, and what great information. Like I said, I should have been careful what I asked for because this took a lot of time to digest. I think this really shows that we are proacting to uncertainty. And I think it's key that parking these items gives us some flexibility for the unknown. I've read a lot of articles that say that cities are going to get their money eventually and they shouldn't worry about it, and people have no alternative but to pay taxes. And I think that would be irresponsible for us to act that way. I think we've been very responsible, and I think this further shows that responsibility. And I am extremely supportive of parking the items that staff has identified, knowing that they're parked. And if we don't get a 10% reduction in paid, we may then do all of them. I don't think municipalities should spend themselves out of the pandemic. I don't know where money is going to be coming from in the future, but I think we are showing our taxpayers that we have looked at our budget with a fine-tooth comb. And in fact, with what staff has put together here, we could probably keep the 200,000 extra asphalt overlay. And that may be a discussion and a motion by others, because this shows a potential surplus because we're being very, very financially responsible. I am in full support of this memo and the parking, and I'm willing to discuss a couple of the items, perhaps including them, because our gas price is ever going to be this low. But again, thank you for the report. Thank you for the detail, the pretty graphs, and the summary. It was very helpful and really exactly the type of fiscal responsibility and management I was hoping for and looking for. So I wholeheartedly support this.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Lavery.
Yes, thank you. I'm wondering if we could get the table at the bottom of page 4 of Ms. Tulak's report back on the screen. Thank you very much. And really, this table is a summary of one heck of a lot of hard work by staff and consideration by council, much like Councillor Flynn has indicated. I'm fully supportive of this. I just want to recap this in general for, I guess, for the public, that we have had to look at revenues, expenses incredibly closely. Local governments are not allowed to run deficits. We are required, mandated to have a balanced budget. And this table here, in a few succinct lines, represents the laser-like focus on revenues, expenses, our reserve capacities. And we're in the position to make these tough decisions now because of longstanding good fiscal planning for a number of years. We've talked about this before, but it just needs to be, in my view, needs to be underlined that given these unprecedented times, there are lots of things on that park list that different people may want to prioritize differently. One would hope that if this scenario is based on us having less revenue, taxation revenue coming in, one would hope that we're not going to have to get into those parked items. But if we do, we have them there. So thanks to staff. There are long-term implications for residents in the city as we go forward on this. But right now we have got the best possible contingency planning going. And again, I just want to thank staff again for that. Fully supportive.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Councillor Eliason.
Thanks. I was wondering what was happening. I thought I was missed.
Sorry, I made a mistake.
Yeah, I was like, Kevin's again and again and again. No worries. I think that what we're talking about here is important, and we've asked staff to do some work for us, and we've come up with some options. I don't think it's the right time for any of us to be pulling out anything from the park list. We're doing the park list right now to set aside monies to make sure that we're in what Councillor Lavery just talked about is a fiscally responsible position with options. We are being forced by the provincial government to collect taxes at a date that we did not choose. If we can have our residents pay taxes on time, then I know Councillor Lindgren was going to ask this, but I've had the fortunate ability to ask this before. We can unpark these things. So when we do have the money available, if all of our taxpayers pay early or pay on time like the original date, then these funds will be available. We won't have to go into our reserves. We won't have to go into long-term borrowing. And then we can start knocking these projects off our list. And so I'm supportive of parking them for now, knowing that we've got these projects, and we have to be cognizant of what projects we can do during the summer months and what we can push out till fall, depending on our revenue that's coming in from our taxpayers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Eliason. Councillor Lindgren, thank you for your question. Did you feel like it was answered, or would you like me to ask a staff member?
No, I think it was answered. There is information in the report about it. I just wanted to confirm that the money is retained with that project unless something happens unforeseen and we need it in the future. And I think that's been confirmed.
Yes, your understanding is correct there. Thank you. Councillors, is there any other questions or comments at this time? Councillor Flynn.
Question for Director of Engineering and Public Works, and I agree with Councillor Eliason that any of us shouldn't pick our pet projects and have them back in. That's not what I'm trying to do, but I did have a question regarding the asphaltic overlays. Will we get similar pricing if after all this is said and done and everybody pays on time like mentioned and we don't end up with a budget issue? Is there the ability, even though it would be a smaller order, to get similar pricing after the fact, after all the other asphaltic overlays are done?
Director of Engineering and Public Works.
I appreciate that question. I would like to see the 200,000 be put back into the project list because we can utilize it for the projects moving forward. That's just my opinion right now. In answer to your question, Councillor Flynn, it is a unit price contract, so we can add projects as we go along. It's all about timing though, if we can get them done in time.
So I'm almost hearing two answers to that, is that we could probably add 200 and get more done, but they might not be able to get them done, so we might not be able to do them.
That is correct.
Okay, then I won't fight to add them back now. I'll wait and see. I think it's good that we've parked that amount, and I support that. Sorry, Rob.
Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. Two questions. Can you just clarify what the 10th Street Northeast project is? And also, I just want to get an indication of if we park all of these projects, does that affect our ability to keep all of our staff working? Or are we going to be facing the possibility of having to lay people off because they don't have any work to do?
Okay, I think the Director of Engineering and Public Works probably can answer both those questions, starting with the 10th Street Northeast question.
So thank you, Your Worship. So the 10th Street Northeast is the sidewalk project that goes from 8th Avenue Northeast to the hospital. It is on the east side of the road. It's a sidewalk upgrade project. And as far as layoffs, currently we're already short-staffed, so we are struggling to meet not only the projects, but also the day-to-day tasks. So at some point, if the COVID situation changes, I think we would be looking at the relief, the opportunity of hiring more relief. Okay. But again, in the fall, depending on weather, you never know if there's layoffs or not. Some of these projects were earmarked for partial staff activities. So there will be a reduction in the amount of work that we do have for our staff.
Thank you, Director of Engineering and Public Works. Is there any other comments from council? Okay, maybe I'll just make my closing comments now then. First of all, appreciate Councillor Flynn's comments about work by staff. The acting Director of Finance and her staff, Bianca in particular, working alongside our CAO, who was a large part of this project. And it was very time consuming, and it is very detailed, and they've managed to get it down to 4 pages, which we can actually understand. And so much appreciated to staff. Also appreciate council, because council was insistent and directive in making sure we had this piece, and I think it's a very important piece. I also appreciate council's understanding to put aside a particular project that's in this list, and we all probably have one, and put it aside for the greater good of what we're trying to do. I think the message for our taxpayer is we are actually taking things into our own hands here. The province has supplied municipalities, and you hear them all over the province, asking for monies. The province has only really supplied monies in loan that you have to give back later. And this plan takes that away. We do not have to borrow money and create a problem down the road. We're taking things into our own hands. We're looking after our own financial house. And that's a credit to not just this council, but the councils of the past. I think it's important to know that park does not mean canceled, and clearly council understands that. It just depends on the revenues. If we park the project and it does not get done this year, that is not that bad, because when we do the 2021 budget, we might be happy that we have those monies there to do that project, because we won't have to come up with it. So parking the project is a positive no matter how you look at it, in my estimation. This is our insurance policy, really. It's a very prudent financial move. It ensures the finances of our city are going to be looked after. We're not relying on borrowing. We're not relying on outside government assistance. So, and I think in the long run, it's going to make our 2021 budgeting easier. And we know that we already have requests for 2021. No one can guess how many taxes we are going to collect, whether it's going to be 85%, 90%, 95%, but I think 85% is a pretty conservative number. So I'm fairly confident that a number of these park projects, we will be able to have the discussion at some time about pulling them out and completing them. So I certainly will vote in favor. I'll just give councillors one more opportunity if they wish to comment or if they have any other questions. Councillor Ling is just wondering about when tax notices will be mailed out. Chief Financial Officer, when are our notices going out?
Your Worship, they typically go out the 20th of May, but due to obviously timing of different tax rates that have come in, our goal is to have them out by May 29th. So it'll be that last week of May that the tax notices are all mailed out.
Great, thank you very much. The a small little point of interest for council and for the public probably is normally what we've done when we've put our tax notices together is we've hired 6 students and brought them upstairs here and had them in a room and they folded tax notices for 2 days. Of course, we can't do that. So now staff, all of staff here, are taking tax notices around their desks and are helping fold them. So it's a good example of teamwork and taking something on that needs to be done. So end of May, and as council had directed, I have put a notice in that tax motion or a tax notice asking residents who are able to pay and have the ability to pay and have planned to pay to please remit their taxes by July the 2nd. And I think that a lot will. Having said that, I will call the question. Please indicate your vote on the chat line. Great, thank you. It passes unanimously. We will move on to introduction of bylaws, item 10.1. City of Salmon Arm zoning amendment bylaw number 4390. Gunther, 1141 18th Street Northeast, R1 to R4. First and second reading. We have a proposed motion. If I could have a mover and a seconder to get it on the floor. Thank you, Councillor Flynn, seconded by Councillor Cannon. I'll ask the Director of Development and Planning to comment on the application.
Thanks, Your Worship. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Yeah, I see people nodding.
Okay, great. So the property under application is addressed at 1141 18th Street Northeast. It fronts two streets, 18th Street Northeast and 11th Avenue Northeast. It's 1 hectare in size, and it's presently designated medium density residential in the official community plan. And the proposal is to rezone the property to R4 medium density residential for possibly a 30 to 40 unit multifamily development, which would require a development permit if it is under a certain form. If it is rezoned to R4, a development permit would be required if there's any development involving duplexes, triplexes, or fourplexes. A single family residential strata would not require a development permit under R4, just so you know about that. There's presently a single family dwelling on the property that has been there for a long time. It's one of the last large parcels of land in this area with a lot of development potential. And Mr. Gunther inquired with our planning department earlier this year, and we went over the bylaws that would be necessary for development. We went over the official community plan, and the policies and maps are included in the staff report in the agenda. There was no park or greenway identified on the property or near the property, and for that reason, park dedication or trail construction never entered the conversation with Mr. Gunther. I know that came up for discussion last planning committee meeting, and so as a result of that, although there was no motion, I did put together an idea or a concept should council require trail dedication as part of this application. Aside from that, this development proposal, if rezoned, would require substantial upgrades. It would require road dedication along 18th Street to widen it out by approximately 3.5 meters. 68 meters of new frontage improvements along 18th, sidewalk, boulevard, street lighting, probably a fire hydrant. And then 11th Avenue, which is over 100 meters in length, would also be required to be upgraded to the current standard of the day. And all of those requirements are outlined in detail in the engineering department memorandum attached to the report. So if you have a look at those, you can see that there's quite a lot of work to do in order to develop. And we did not get into that detail with Mr. Gunther in our verbal meetings because we require an application in front of us to evaluate it and the proposal. And that is why we had to wait for the engineering department memorandum. We didn't wait too long for that, but it does take time to put that together. And now Mr. Gunther and his engineering consultant have a copy of that. So we've tried to give them as much information as we can. There's also a policy in the OCP, I believe it's on 56 of your agenda, page 56, 58. And it speaks to discretion of city council or the approving officer of the city to require greenways as either a condition for rezoning or subdivision. I put that in there based on the discussion last week. The important thing to me with those policies is if either entities require a greenway, that greenway or trail should be shown on the map. On the previous page to that, 57, I put together a possible scenario should a trail be required, including a 2-meter wide right-of-way along the north and west parcel boundaries, and also including possibly an upgrade of the lane along the north parcel boundary as well. The lane does require widening, and because there's no vehicular access onto 11th Avenue that will be permitted, I anticipate the lane will be needed for road access. On page 56, there's some numbers that I crunched rather quickly to show you what could be possible with under the scenario of a park or trail dedication. So if there was a green dot in the OCP or a green line for a future trail, these are the type of calculations that I would be doing. And I included that just for your information. So Your Worship, that's about all I can say at this point.
Great, thank you very much, Director. Appreciate the detail of your report. And I know Mr. Gunther is also online and listening. We'll go to councillors first. Councillor Eliason.
Karen. I'm just waiting for my camera to come up. Thanks, Your Worship, and thanks, Kevin, for the outline. Maybe it wasn't very clear when I was talking last week, but can we go to page 49 of the report with the draft subdivision layout? Okay, perfect. So I know that you've put in there the option of going around or widening the thing, and I know that how that might come off. But what I'm talking about when we were talking about having access or a greenway, it wasn't necessarily a trail around the subdivision like we've done in some ALR or around the Hillcrest subdivision. I know that if I want to go from Piccadilly Place Mall and I want to go to Blackburn Park, I cannot go through any of those private stratas. They're locked off with gates and fences. I want to walk from 20th to Councillor Flynn's house. There's a sidewalk that gets me from that road to his cul-de-sac. I want to walk on 70th through Canoe. There's little accesses all around the subdivisions to make connectivity easier. Now, looking at the page right in front of us on the screen, it looks like there's a city right-of-way to the north of this property. And there looks like there's a right-of-way to that city right-of-way. There also looks like there's a green, and then to the south, running north-south, there looks like there's green spaces or roads. I don't necessarily want people going in and out of backyards. Is it possible for us to achieve some sort of right-of-way or access north-south on this property to our city right-of-way to the north, which may have to be expanded through a greenway or walkway to the south, which is the 11th Street? Is that possible? Or 11th Avenue, I'm sorry.
Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, the only way I see it being possible is if council requires it as a condition for rezoning.
Yeah.
And with that, I would suggest that council not require it unless the applicant agrees to that.
Councillor Eliason.
Yeah, thanks. The reason why I would ask for it is I hate to see landlocked stratas. And we're working in the stages now of here's a preliminary site plan. Hey, you may need the road right of way or the city right of way. We're in that negotiation period. And if the applicant doesn't agree to it and maybe we don't approve this application, that's one of the realities of it. But there are two large parcels to the north of this where people may walk through or want to walk through this strata development. Is that a possibility for future development, the two parcels to the north of it?
Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, this neighborhood came under some scrutiny over 10 years ago with the Greenway strategy. And the lines that you see on the map in front of you are a result of that planning exercise over 10 years ago. The closest resemblance to a trail connection is really from 20th Avenue through an existing right-of-way down to 18th, and then through this block of land to 16th, and then down the Dodds Trail to Lakeshore. So that has been contemplated by the Greenway strategy. That is what the Greenways, or sorry, the Shuswap Trail Alliance and the Greenways Committee are focusing on for connectivity. And I don't really see anything north, but any property that's a hectare in size or greater, and these are large properties in this neighborhood, there's potential for trails anywhere.
Councillor Larson?
Yeah, thanks. I'm not looking for, I don't know if I'm sending the message wrong. I think maybe I'm being misunderstood. I'm not looking for a bike park. I'm not looking for a mountain bike trail. I'm not looking for a hike. I'm just looking for legal access north to south that people can walk through a subdivision or a strata, making sure that they can get in or get out rather than a gated community. I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone else, but if where the hand is on this property, or right now on the screen that I'm looking at where it says proposed sidewalk, if those two properties get developed, and yeah, that one there, to the right there, and to the left, no, not to the north, yeah, those two right there that are adjacent to this property, if those are to develop and those people want to walk south, they have to go up and then down. I don't see that blue sidewalk going north of this property towards Councillor Lavery's house. I don't see that ever being built as a priority or anything happening up there in the short or near term. I see people walking from this south, and I just want to make sure that how we can make access happen for that. I don't want people walking through backyards. This isn't part of an elaborate trail system. This is just access from north to south through there, through the roads, on the roads, to another sidewalk. Maybe I missed it. I'll draw a map.
Thank you, Councillor Larson. We can come back to you as well. So we'll move on to Councillor Flynn's question. Councillor Flynn.
So are we just in questions?
Questions or comments are fine.
Okay, so we're talking about a rezoning. If we go to the map on page 57 in my agenda where Kevin, Director of Planning, Mr. Pearson, when we're online, I'm less formal, put a proposed, at least it's 57, yeah, there we go, trail, if council requested it. First of all, I will say I will never request this, and I will never hold up this rezoning for this type of trail. When I look at this, I went out there and actually drove Kathy by there to have a look at it. There's already a sidewalk on 11th that I gather has to be upgraded. That's my first question. Is there work that has to be done on that? And there will be a sidewalk on 18th as a requirement. Those, I'm just confirming that. Kevin can do that in a second. But I was the former chair of the Greenways Committee. I love all the interconnectivity we have between subdivisions and cul-de-sacs in my area and everywhere else in town. I don't see this the same at all. I see this as a private strata. If I was wanting to live in this strata, I wouldn't want people walking through my strata. And the proposed trail that Mr. Pearson put here because of council's questions cuts absolutely zero time or distance off of a walk if you're going down 18th to the, I'm assuming that's north, south, I'm not sure. I completely support the motion, and I do not think we should be requesting a trail. A sidewalk on two sides of this is connectivity, it is active transportation, and I think asking any more is too much. So I support the motion as is, will not support a trail, and do not support public access to a private strata.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Director of Engineering and Public Works, just to confirm Councillor Flynn's questions, the sidewalk on 18th Street is to be built. Is there upgrades to the sidewalk on 11th?
Your worship, there is currently sidewalk there. I would have to look at the detail to see if it needs to be upgraded. Obviously, there will be some hydrants and street lighting, etc. And
Okay,
it is a local road, so there is sidewalk on one side.
thank you, and that's probably what the director meant about upgrades. Thank you. Councillor Lindgren.
Thank you. Two questions. One, I just wanted to clarify if what Councillor Eliason is talking about, I don't know if he's familiar with Country Gate on 2nd Avenue Southeast. It's next to Foxcroft and the Rotary Gardens, and it is possible to walk through that development to the next development. There are no sort of dedicated throughways, but there is also a lack of fences on most sides so that it's possible to walk through from one to the other just on the normal roads that the cars use to get to the parking lot. Is that similar to what Councillor Eliason would be asking for?
I'm not sure, but we will get back to Councillor Eliason eventually. There's just a list of other folks.
Okay, and then the other question is, when we talked last year about a possible development on, I think it's 10th Street Southeast, which just above the twisty road that closes in the winter time.
Yes.
There was a development there. I don't know what that would be, the west side of the road, I guess. There was a big development proposed there, and the developer was required to dedicate a percentage of the land to park space. So I'm just wondering what the difference is between that development and this development, that we don't require any land dedicated to green space.
Director of Development Services, the developer has to make a DCC contribution to parks, but would you like to explain that, please?
Microphone on. This goes back to what I said at the beginning of this introduction. There is no park designated on the property in the OCP. The property, the large property, 10-acre that Councillor Lindgren is referring to on 10th Street Southeast, there was a neighborhood park designated on that property. And there is also 7th Street Southeast, which is a very old road that meanders through the woods, and you would never know it's there, but there's a proposed greenway on that as well. And so with the subdivision design for Mr. Massier on 10th Street Southeast, we did look at connectivity, pedestrian connections in that Area B neighborhood, and the OCP was in favor of park dedication on that property.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. It doesn't have anything to do with the size of the property. It's strictly because the OCP called for a park at some point in the future there.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Councillor Lindgren, does that answer fully your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cannon.
Thank you. So I get what Councillor Eliason is getting at, connecting the property. Sure, we have 18th and 11th, but when you look at those two bigger properties, let me see which, the one, just want to see which one I want to look at here. Appendix 3, it's the OCP map. But if you look at the properties just above, the 1281 and the 12, I think it's 31 or something, those bigger properties, I think if we're forward thinking, even though the greenways didn't recognize this, but have to connect it so that we're able when those properties do get developed, we have it there so that it's not kind of like a gated community. I think having the connection would be good to get it at this time when we're looking at the rezoning, because that's the only time that we have the ability to get that. And I think by doing that, we'd be looking ahead for those bigger properties when they get developed. So I think looking at getting the land to have some connectivity would be a good thing to look at or support for sure.
Thank you, Councillor Cannon. Councillor Lavery.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. I think there's some solutions here. I've got some questions for staff. And I also want to hear pretty soon from the applicant about his revised submission that he's put into council, because I do think that there are some solutions here. I don't think we're talking a trail, but we are talking connectivity. I'm going to ask just for a couple of items. If we could have Appendix 3, the steep slope one put on the map. Thank you very much. And maybe expand it a bit even. Yeah, thank you. And actually, this is the first time I've ever seen this map, and it really pretty accurately portrays my property a little bit further down there. So I know where it's relevant to my property, and as I walk through my neighborhood, relevant to here. So I want to, this is my operational concept here right now. If you notice to the properties to the north, and if you go down 18th, there's a lot of steepness there, and there is going to be considerable, in my non-engineering view, restrictions to a number of those properties being built full out. So if we could, I think that our focus on connectivity, and I am along Councillor Lyson's thinking on this, but not to the extent of something major on the north side of this application to permit those further northern properties to be more fully developed, because I think it's going to be a tough go. And I think at that time, there can be some solutions there. If we could, Your Worship, through you to staff, turn to page 58, and I'll have to get there myself. Thank you very much. I'm not quite there. Up page 58. Page 58 on the staff report.
That's 56 right there.
No, one down a bit. Yeah. Under the highlighted ones, and through you, Your Worship, to staff, what is the exact? And this is a great, for me, a great thing to come up. What are the exact definition of paths, trails, I think I know what a trail is, and a roadside corridor? So I'm going to ask staff that, and I want to do it in connection to what was done in Willow Cove, and there's connectivity through there. Is what happened there essentially a roadside corridor in our thinking of things?
Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, I can speak to Willow Cove. There was connectivity asked for by council through Willow Cove using a pedestrian right-of-way over the strata roads.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. I was not sitting at the council table at those discussions at the time. So I'm going to suggest that if I have this right, sort of a pedestrian right-of-way over existing roadwork sounds to me similar to what has been proposed from the applicant in his latest edition.
You're thinking about point 4 that he's made there.
Yeah, and so that's my thinking right now. I think in this process, we've questions to staff, but I do think we need to hear from the applicant on that. I have some other thoughts about the information there, but is there, I guess that's my question, is there a consistency between what the applicant has just lately put in and this idea of a right-of-way over existing pathway within the strata?
Thank you, Councillor Lavery, and I think it is timely. We don't always invite the applicant to present at the council meeting when we're considering first and second reading, but I think given that there's new information and that we're also doing this electronically, it might be a good idea to have Mr. Gunther just comment on his late item, and in particular, piece number 4 that Councillor Lavery referred to. I see Councillor Lyson was also thinking, I think, about the same thing. Kelly, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Richard. I'll come back to that.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You've been listening to the conversation, I'm assuming.
Yes, I have.
Okay. Could you Kelly comment on item 4? I have feedback on your phone, I think.
Sorry, I'm on my phone. Yeah.
Okay. Can you comment on number 4 that you wrote about?
Sorry, I don't have that in front of me, but I'm assuming that's in regard to the roadway that just stops short of connecting to 11th. Is that correct?
That's right. It says the east-west internal road will terminate near the west multifamily units, but we propose to create a connection to 11th Avenue for pedestrians to allow our residents to walk to destinations to the west of the development. Since we're not envisioning a community, this shortcut, if you will, is available for all non-residents. Can you comment on that?
Well, yeah. So what we plan to do, the road has to stop there, apparently. So we're going to want all of our residents, of course, to just connect from that road to 11th, because generally there's going to be a lot of traffic, I think, heading south for sure. So north is no problem. Just walk out, hop on the sidewalks and go. And south, just walk on a short path, which is going to be just through landscaping, and connect with 11th.
So what you're envisioning is if Director of Development Services put the kind of rough subdivision out there, what you're envisioning then, Kelly, is that people will walk, the public will walk down 18th and then go on the Strata Road and then turn left on the road that doesn't go all the way to 11th. You don't have to do that, but there'll be a walkway there. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be an option for residents, you know, coming or walking south on 18th.
Okay, so you don't plan on having a gate at 18th that so people couldn't get in?
We're not. We're gonna have the entrance to that looking really nicely, but we don't plan on putting an actual gate. No.
Okay, I think where Councillor Lavery was maybe thinking, and I should probably let him do this, but do you have any objection to a pedestrian right-of-way within the road, in the Strata Road?
I sort of have mixed feelings, you know, about that. You know, we're going to beautify 18th. It's probably going to cost quite a bit of money. And there'll be a brand new sidewalk there where there currently isn't anything. And the sidewalk on 11th is a very nice sidewalk, nice and wide. You know, for people to just carry on and walk down those sidewalks as they're already doing, I don't see a problem with that at all. In fact, it's going to be a great place to walk, and it's quite a wide sidewalk, so it's you know, you feel very safe on it. I'm not sure what the benefit or any benefit of cutting through a private neighborhood really is.
Okay, fair enough. I'm gonna turn over to Councillor Lavery to see if he has a question for you. And then, are you comfortable with me opening it up to questions to other councillors?
Yes.
Sure, you bet.
Okay, Councillor Lavery, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking for a solution here. I'll wait for the conversation to develop further, but I'm prepared for either to make a motion or to second Councillor Elias's motion. We have a number of strata properties that have public connectivity through them. It's a better option than a trail in front of the view. It's less costly, and I'm giving strong consideration to that. I think, and I'll just leave it at there for a while, but I think that is the solution. I actually do think that most people will just go along 18th and down 11th, but there, in my view, should be an option there, and I'll just wait for further conversation.
Okay, Councillor Eliason, do you have questions to Mr. Gunther?
I think we're all on the same page. Like I know what Kelly proposes to do. I know what staff is wanting to do, and I agree with Councillor Lavery. I'm not looking for a trail in anybody's backyard. I just want pedestrian connectivity, and I think Kelly understands that. From north to south, people won't generally use it, but long term it makes sense. I just want to make sure that there's no locked gate going up there. So if somebody comes down, comes out, or goes in and goes north to south. So I don't know what it's called, but I think that Mr. Pearson has done it with several other strata developments, and we've approved them in several other developments for public pedestrian access in and out. So in this case, it would be north and south, but knowing that that road is not going to connect south to 11th, then it'd be nice to have some connectivity for pedestrian only up there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm coming around to this idea, actually. I can see that for the existing neighborhood, the way it's set up right now, that maybe that this seems extraneous. But when the properties to the north are developed, it will make a lot of sense to be able to walk from the northern side of this property to 11th Street. And if it could be just a sidewalk with pedestrian right-of-way, or the strata road that is currently shown running north-south, or the greenway, I think it says green space to be added. If there was a sidewalk through there, I think it will get very little use except for from the residents in that property for now. But when there's development on the properties to the north, I think that it will provide a really nice access for them to just walk down to 11th when they're walking downtown. And we're trying to encourage people to walk and bike, and this is a good idea.
Thank you, Councillor Lindgren. Director of Development Services, do you want to comment on Uptown Village?
Sure, Your Worship. I just wrote in the chat line about Uptown Village, which is on 15th Avenue Northeast, near 30th Street Northeast. That's a big parcel of land. There was actually connectivity shown in the Greenways strategy and the OCP over that property. And we were able to successfully negotiate a pedestrian right-of-way over the strata road within that one. This property that we're looking at today does not have any identification for such in the OCP. I have to go back to that. I know that when it comes to strata development, having lived in a strata for 8 years, I know that it can be an issue to have public pedestrians walking through a strata. So I do sympathize with the private property concerns with that. But again, if council is wanting this, we would probably be looking at as a condition for rezoning to have a blanket right-of-way registered over the entire property that would allow pedestrian access. And the blanket right-of-way would send a signal so at the development stage we could narrow the scope of that right-of-way down to something that can be defined on a plan.
Thank you, Director. Thank you for the motion, Councillor Lavery. I'm going to accept that motion, which reads, staff to negotiate connective public pedestrian right-of-way on the roadway through the strata, Councillor Lindgren is seconding that amendment to the zoning motion. Councillor Lavery, would you like to speak further to the amendment?
No, I think there's been a fair amount of discussion here. This is a development I'm really looking forward to in our neighborhood. I think it's going to be a huge addition. It's going to provide lots of housing opportunities, and it's time to keep connectivity in mind.
Thank you. Speaking to the motion or to the amendment, Councillor Flynn.
Sorry, Your Worship. I will vote against the motion.
Or the amendment.
Or the amendment, sorry. It's interesting, some of the comments. Councillor Eliason, you're wrong. We're not all. I'm totally on a different page. It's a corner lot. I understand the talk about the development to the north, but people have already said that it probably isn't likely based on topography and very difficult. And this is a perfect development in a perfect location, and I'm not going to risk it by forcing a trail on a corner lot. To me, it's the ultimate in laziness. Here we're trying to promote active transportation and walking, and people are not wanting to walk on two very nice sidewalks around a corner lot. Mr. Pearson has been very good at identifying pedestrian walkways where he thinks they make sense. And as our planner, he doesn't think it makes sense here. So I will vote against the motion, or the amendment, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Eliason.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't mean to include Councillor Flynn in my comments about being all on the same page, because clearly we're not always on the same page.
That's okay.
It's a simple thing just to not throw a gate on the end of the road near 11th, because some people will walk through it, some people won't. I agree, but basically this is about making sure long term there's not a gate. That's it. And then people, if they wanted to walk through it, and if those north properties ever get developed, and if there has to be some negotiation for the city right of way to the north, this is part of it. Hey, thanks for giving us that right of way, making sure there's no gate. What can we do with the city right of way that you could use? So it's not crazy. It's not over the top. It's not a trail through it. It's just making sure that if somebody's walking up, they can go through that place where there's not a gate. So I will support the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn, question? Councillor Flynn, your mic is off.
I know my computer, if I'm late, I know it's off. My computer freezes up sometimes, sorry. So I have a question. To the applicant, if we're allowed to ask the applicant questions, he stated the front entrance, the main entrance is not going to be gated, and he's going to put a pedestrian access there. Have we got other developments where we've put it in their bylaw that has to be public access? Because I don't see anybody there policing the public access. I think 90% of our stratas are closed with gates, but if he's not going to put a gate, why are we mandating it?
So your question, Councillor Flynn, is to Mr. Gunther, is he going to put a gate on 18th?
Well, he's already said he wasn't on either side, so I just
understand. Okay, is there any other comments on the amendment? Okay, I see no other comments I see some comments on chat line, but nobody wishing to speak. So just take a minute to read those comments. And I will call a question on the amendment. Please indicate your vote on the amendment. So the amendment passes. Councillor Flynn is opposed. We'll now consider the motion as amended. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion as amended? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the motion as amended. Please indicate in the chat line if you're in favor or opposed. Motion as amended carries unanimously. Thank you. Just to the director for Mr. Gunther's information, this will go to public hearing 2 weeks from today, is that correct?
Your worship, the next council meeting, I'll ask our administrative clerk here, May 25th.
Yeah.
And so the public notice has to go, the sign has to go up this week by Friday, and then we'll start advertising in the newspaper.
And so the date of the public hearing will be the 25th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Council, and thank you, Kelly, for contributing to our discussion. Okay, we'll move on to reconsideration of bylaws, section 11. City of Seminar and Fee for Service Amendment Bylaw number 4397. We have a proposed motion. If we could have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Cannon, thanks for moving. Councillor Elias, seconds. Director of Engineering and Public Works, I think.
Yes, Your Worship. I don't have any comments at this time other than it's an, essentially just an update for the bylaw for the funding.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions on this final reading of this bylaw? Please indicate your vote, then I'll call the question. All in favor? Good, I see it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll go to 11.2, City of Salmon Zoning Amendment Bylaw 4381, Wild Blue Development. It's R1 to R8. This is final reading. We have a proposed motion. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Cannon moves. Councillor Elias seconds. Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, bylaw number 4381 has been approved by the Ministry of Transportation on April 29th. And so it's back in front of council for final reading.
Great, thank you very much. Councillors, any questions or comments on this final reading of this bylaw? Seeing none, I'll call the question. That passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll go to 11.3, City of Sound Arm Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4377, Gilmore, 6th Street Southeast, R1 to R8. Again, final reading. We have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Eliason moves. Seconded by Councillor Wallace Richmond. Director of Development Services.
And this bylaw has also received approval from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure on April 29th as well. And it's in front of you for consideration of final reading.
Great, thank you. Council, any questions or comments on this final reading? Councillor Lavery.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I fully support this. I just had to close the loop a little bit. When we last talked about this, there was questions of the legal occupancy of the existing suite. It does not affect my vote on this, but I was wondering if there's any update from staff.
Thank you. Thanks for remembering. Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, thanks for the reminder, Councillor Lavery. We did contact the applicant and the owner with the concerns expressed by the neighbor, and the applicant was very cooperative and explained the situation in the dwelling and that there's no illegal activity going on there as far as zoning goes.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, Councillor Lavery. Did you have any follow-up, Councillor Lavery? Okay. I'll call the question then. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you. 11.4, City of Salmon Arm Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4375, Lewis, 710 10th Street Southwest. This is R1 to R5. It's final reading. I have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Lavery, seconded by Councillor Cannon. Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, this is Like the previous ones, this bylaw has received approval by the Ministry of Transportation. No conditions, no issues. They approved it on April 29th, and now it's in front of you for consideration of final reading.
Great, thank you. Councillor Flynn, you said you declared a conflict in the past and you'll do that again today. Thank you. Councillor Flynn has declared a conflict on this item, so please be so noted. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Oh, hang on, Councillor Eliason has a comment. Then I'll call the question. Go ahead, Councillor.
If we can bring up the page 108. Notice there's no access to that big green space through all of these stratas that are down there. We could have changed that in the previous council. I'll support this one.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Eliason. I'll call the question now. Please indicate your vote. It passes unanimously. Noted that Councillor Flynn had exited for conflict reasons. Thank you to the Director of Development Services for buzzing through those with us. Appreciate it. We will go now to section 12, which is informational correspondence. Councillors, you have the list of informational correspondence in front of you. If there's an item that you wish to speak to, please indicate on the chat line and I will call your name. Councillor Eliason.
Number 4, please. Oh, you thought I'd take 1, but no, I'll take 4. We were talking earlier about the budget and things we parked. This is one of the things for parking at the disc golf course that I would really like to see. So, but I would like to ask staff if they could work with Duncan to get the sign made for this.
Yes, we can check with if this is part of the park item where we're doing the so Councillor Eliason, just so I can check on your question, is this sign separate from the parked monies, or can you clarify?
Yeah, the parked monies were to build a gravel parking area and a road access from 10th Avenue Southeast to this property. Currently, I believe we trespass more or less, or we have an agreement over the neighbor's property. That was the $20,000 we took out. Last year, we had money set aside for helping with this, I believe from council initiatives, to help with signage and some of the equipment, if I'm correct. Maybe Director Neuenhausen can help.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Thanks for clarifying the question. Director of Development and Public Works.
Your Worship, this sign is separate from the building of the parking lot. And I believe it's my understanding that Duncan is going to construct the sign or have it built. I'm not sure where he's getting the funding. I believe it's coming, I think they're funding it themselves. But I don't want the sign up yet because we can't open it to the public until we have an access or a parking lot. So what we're seeking is, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
So what they're seeking is the approval for the design of the signage at this time.
Okay, so are you comfortable working with Duncan on that piece and just explaining the sign can't go up till we get the parking lot there?
Yes, we have discussed that with them already.
Councillor Eliason, did you have any follow-up to that?
No, I just wanted to make sure that we could work on it while we work to unpark the money to park.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
Get that one? You guys like that?
Okay. Do you have any other items, Councillor Eliason?
No, thanks.
Okay. Councillor Lindgren, thank you. I see you have conflict of interest with letter number 5. So if that comes up, you can exit at that time. Councillor Lindgren, do you have any other items that you want to speak to?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, anyone wish to speak to other items? Okay, Councillor Lavery, item 3 and 5. Why don't you speak to item 3 first, Councillor Lavery, and then when you speak to item 5, just give Councillor Lindgren a minute to exit. Go ahead, Councillor.
Councillor
Councillor
Duff,
Liver.
thank you, Your Worship. This is a great letter from Ms. Dick coming in about the fur beetle and what's going on, and some general comments, and then I'll suggest some action, Your Worship. So the general comments is that I think as we're all getting up to speed, there are treatment concerns about Crown land, Salmon Arms surrounded by it, treatment concerns about city land, and treatment concerns about property owners who are responsible for their own fire smarting of their own property. And there are various initiatives that are going on. There's been application by the city for extensive Crown land treatment. We have not heard back on it. And while I'm usually optimistic, I'm not overly optimistic. We're going to hear back about funding on that. It is a major issue. We will, I would suggest, keep bringing it up to the ministry and to UBCM. The city has started our own fuel load mitigation, and the Douglas fir bark beetle, as council knows, has been a priority in some of the initiatives that we're starting, that were done last year and will be happening this year as well. So this is great. I would suggest, Your Worship, a couple of things. I would like to refer this letter to both the CSRD Fire Smart Initiative as well as Silvatech to ask for their thoughts, so that the letter writer suggests that residents be given education and information on pheromone treatments for Douglas fir. And I think it's a legitimate question. Let's see if there's some money in the education budget for 2020 to do that, or some suggestions from who we're contracting with of how to go about providing that component for residents. So if council's okay with that, I'll work with staff and we'll get information and report back to council.
Absolutely. And I don't think we need a motion, as you're the liaison for fire smarting, and I'm quite happy that you're willing to take that on. It is an excellent letter.
I think I haven't seen who's attending with the Salmon Arm Observer, but I keep saying this. It is a fascinating science involved with attractant and repellent of the fir bark beetle. There are experts in the community, including Ms. Dick here, I think, who is one, but certainly Silvatech and others as well. A great piece to be written on it, I would suggest. And I think it's one that we are going to, as the letter writer suggests, we are having to confront it sooner and sooner and sooner. We're seeing that red fir beetle kill as it's coming down from Crown land.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lavery. And Ms. Dick is an expert in this field, so I like your suggestion. Perhaps Martha will take you up on it. Councillor Lavery, you want to speak to number 5? Councillor Lindgren, yes. Can I have the corporate officer just indicate that she will text Councillor Lindgren when item 5 is finished?
Yes, I can do that, Your Worship.
Great, thank you. Okay, Councillor Lavery, item number 5.
Yeah, thank you. I first start off with just a general question to staff. Does staff view that the agreement that has been referenced is legally sound and binding, both in staff opinion and do we have a legal opinion on that?
Dale?
Your Worship, yes, the agreement is legally binding. We don't have an opinion on that. I don't think we require one.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think that my general comment on here is that, and again, I think council has been good on this, but we have to make sure that there's the next time on this particular one, an RFP/EOI process is considered as for the next rollover of this contract.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery, and that'll be 2021 December, so we will note that.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak to number 5 at this time? Because then if not, I'll invite Councillor Lindgren back in.
I just typed in a request to speak to it.
Okay, please go ahead then, Councillor Flynn, and I see Councillor Wallace Richmond, I think, too. So Councillor Flynn first.
So I guess my comment would be that I wouldn't mind the staff summary of what has been done in the past. I know at one point, I'm pretty sure it was either the chamber or somebody like that was managing these. I think it's been out to the community to say, is anybody interested? The valuation, I mean, it's worth what somebody will pay. And in the past, nobody's been willing to pay more than $1,300, as I understand. But I don't want a long, detailed staff report, but there are a lot of questions in this letter that, like, what kind of condition are the benches in? Does the contract include something that says what kind of shape they have to be in? To comment that they're in dangerous condition, is that true? There's a lot of insinuations that I'd sure like to have somebody look at and speak to so that we have the full information. So,
can I have the CAO comment on that?
Yes, Your Worship, staff have in fact done that and have provided a response via Councillor Lindgren. And we've also talked to Mr. Genn about the letter, but there is a detailed staff report on it.
Okay, so have we shared that report yet? Or can we be shared that report, please?
I've seen it.
It was sent to council.
I might have missed that then. I didn't see it, so I'd love to see it. If somebody could forward me the report. I must have missed it.
Okay, we'll have the CAO do that. CAO, forward that to Councillor Flynn.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wallace-Richmond, did you wish to comment on item 5?
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. I don't normally go to the trouble of saying this, but I think this letter is not connecting cause and effect. I think that the City of Salmon Arms procurement policy is very rigorous and completely above board. And we do not ask what other family member companies are owned and by whom. That would be inappropriate. And just because someone is very generous with the community, that is important and appreciated. It does not put you at the head of the line for contracts you think you may or may not want. So I need no further information, and I dismiss the claim that are made in some of the assumptions in this letter. And I thought it was important to put that on the record. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace-Richmond. Is there any other councillors wish to speak to item 5? Okay, I see there's not. So thank you to the corporate officer. Just to text Councillor Lindgren, let her know we're finished with item 5. And then we'll go to Councillor Cannon, who's going to speak about item 6.
I could quickly speak about item number 6, but Councillor Flynn was ahead of me wanting to speak about 1 and 2. But quickly, number 6, Roots and Blues in this letter sent us April 28th. They're looking for support because even though they've made the tough decision of not having the Roots and Blues Festival this year, there still is grants that they're able to apply for. So they're just looking for a letter of support from Mayor and Council.
Would you make that motion, Councillor Cannon?
I'll make that motion.
We have a seconder. Councillor Wallace-Richmond, thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? I see no discussion. Please, if you're not in favor, please indicate if you are not in favor.
And
that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Councillor Cannon, did you have any other items? And then I'll go to Councillor Flynn.
No, that's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn, item 1 and 2.
Well, this used to be your specialty and then it became Councillor Eliason's, but I'll try to do my best Councillor Eliason impersonation.
Okay, thank you.
So you see there in the
You're gonna be right? Oh, this is unbelievable.
The new single family dwellings, there's really good news. We're up like almost 1.8 million. And really the only difference between this year, which is a very unusual year with COVID and everything, and last year is 2 big commercial developments last year and 3 industrial. So I'm thinking this is actually quite good news, and staff is still working very hard.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. I agree with you. In fact, there's more permits in March this year than last year, and outside those big ones you talked about. Yes, so I think we have to be very happy with where we're at in the month of March or month of April.
Yeah, and perhaps that one we discussed earlier will help add to this number in the near future after a public hearing if it gets supported.
Yes. Did you want to comment on number 2 as well or no?
I think number 2 just continues to show that we've had some really good years recently, and really we're even the 9 million thus far. If we looked all those other years at just single family, we'd probably be looking pretty good comparatively. So if anybody's got 5-10 million extra and wants to develop something big, I'm sure we'd welcome it, and we'll be back where we were.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Wallace Richmond, number 7.
Okay, good.
Thanks, Your Worship. And thank you to Councillor Flynn for nudging me on that. I hope that we can support the Family Center in their efforts to start a social enterprise daycare. We know this is of great need in our community, and if Your Worship is willing, I would like to make that motion.
And what would your motion be, Councillor Wallace Richmond?
That we write a letter of support. Oh, provide. I know that I don't think, or just to talk to staff about talking to them about what they need so that we can help them find the right direction. The city doesn't have the land to provide, but I certainly would encourage them to think about the spaces that they currently use. I just don't want the letter to go without some attention.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace Richmond. I did write a letter for Ms. Vardell for her grant application, not referring to this letter, but referring to getting into a daycare. This one is more about city land. And so, as you said, we don't really have a city land that would be available for this task, in my opinion.
Can I ask you, Your Worship, through you to staff, has staff been approached about any of this? Because that's a very big ask in a one-time letter.
Yeah, when we get letters like this, we put them on informational correspondence. And then if there's not direction from council, or if there is, we get in touch with the writer and tell them what the result is.
Okay. Would council be supportive of me reaching out to have a conversation with them about how typically something like this would work and that we don't actually have land for that?
I'm comfortable with that.
I think it would be important not to leave them hanging, because some people make the assumption that this is something cities do regularly, and that's certainly not the case in Salmon Arm, and we need to sort of foster that relationship where they might have a better understanding, and maybe we can support them in other ways.
I think that sounds very reasonable. Thank you very much.
All right. I'll put it on my list, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lavery.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. And Councillor Wallace Richmond actually addressed really what my question was going to be. It's to reach out, to have the conversation. I'd see anything like this coming through social impact and coming to council on that, and certainly clarification about the availability that we have of land as well. So I think that let's get them involved, and Councillor Wallace Richmond is the one to do it.
Great, thank you. Councillor Flynn, did you have a comment?
I was going to state somebody should get back to them, and I know people think we have a land bank. There's people at the Economic Development Society that feel we should be working on a land bank for nonprofit, low-cost housing, all of those things. So if Councillor Wallace Richmond is willing to take a step and reach out and make them aware we don't exactly have a surplus of city-owned land. I wouldn't say we don't have any, but I don't know that we have it for this or if we really do have anything that would work. I appreciate Councillor Wallace Richmond taking this on.
Thank you, Councillor Cannon.
There's no question there's a need.
Councillor Cannon.
I guess my thoughts on this is there is licensed daycares in Salmon Arm, and there's new ones. I mean, we had one a while ago that was looking at rezoning and stuff like that. So I think by supporting something like this, or even, you know, if we did have land, I don't think this is fair to private business. Like people that go through all of the funding and all of the applications to open up a licensed daycare. Do you know what I mean? This is in competition with those current businesses that we have in town. So I guess I don't know that I would support this, because there is a process to apply for your own daycare. And we even have the one that's in behind Scrappy's that's supposed to be opening up, but they've run into some, you know, financial issues or what have you. But I guess I'm not quite sure whether I would support helping another daycare open up when we have lots of private daycares in our community.
No, understood. And Councillor Wallace Richmond's communication to Ms. Vardell is going to be that we actually do not have property for a use such as this. And your point's a very good point. We just rezone property to a private person who's going to build a daycare there. Let's see. All right. I think that's all on item 7. Councillor Lindgren, item 14.
Thanks. Sorry for the confusing messages. So the letter from Stick and Stone Cannabis, I'm not familiar with the issue that he's talking about. Is that a city regulation or a provincial regulation that doesn't allow them to use online payment systems?
That's the Director of Development Services. I don't know the answer to that. Director of Development Services, you're a cannabis expert. Oh, only cannabis regulation expert, sorry.
That's
Thank you. Thank you. It is a provincial regulation that controls that. So I think the letter is looking for council support of what they're looking for.
Okay, so that would be lobbying the province to change it, I guess. Councillor Lindgren, do you have to comment further?
Yeah, I would be willing to at least look further into what the regulations are and what they need from us. I can't see why they would be regulated not to be able to allow to take online payment when most other businesses are, but I would say somebody has way more information and has thought this through, but perhaps we can at least find out what the situation is and get back to Mr. Schaefer.
Councillor Lindgren, are you comfortable just finding that information out? We'll certainly get back to Mr. Schaefer, but are you comfortable just checking into it? And then normally the process would be through SOGA and UBCM if council wished to act on it.
Okay, I'll see what I can find out.
Okay, and bring that back to us. That would be helpful.
Sure.
Thank you. Is there any other informational items from 12.1 that people wish to speak to? Okay, seeing none, we'll go over to 12.2. Lana Fitt, Manager, Salmon Arm Economic Development Society, letter dated May 7th. I'll maybe have the corporate officer, I think the corporate officer just comment on this. This is something we've done in the past. Corporate officer, are you comfortable commenting on this?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I can briefly comment. I have spoken to Lana about this request and why the Salmon Arm Economic Development Society is making this request is because they cannot directly receive the funds. The funds would have to come through the Ministry of Agriculture to the city and flow through to economic development. So it's merely a flow through arrangement, and we have successfully done that in the past.
Would we need a motion to authorize that corporate officer?
Yes, Your Worship, we would be looking for a motion to authorize that.
Councillor Flynn, would you make that motion as our rep there, and then maybe you can speak to it? Yes, he does. And then Councillor Lavery is seconding. Councillor Flynn, do you wish to comment or speak to that motion?
No, the letter is pretty self-explanatory. The work being done by EDS overall through this COVID has been amazing. They're working on this food hub. We were hoping to get a bigger announcement on potential of a food hub, but I think the province is asking communities to do a more formal bid. This money is being flowed through to help put that together. And I think you could see a lot more positive announcements in the near future if we do our job for the full application. So this is taking our funds and using them effectively, but when we do get success, EDS can't get the funds, so it has to come back to us. So it's kind of a bookkeeping similar to MRDT, similar to some other issues. So
that's a good comparison. Thank you. Others wishing to speak to this motion, Councillor Lavery.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Just to echo Councillor Flynn's comments, I think we need to do this. It's been done before, but there has been an absolute huge amount of work done in the last year and a half from Council, from Councillor Eliason, Chad Shipmaker, positioning for EOIs as the situation has changed in the province. This is a direct award to EDS to finalize this stuff off. And I think in these day and times, that's pretty cool to have. And as Councillor Flynn indicates, hopefully it's an indication of some future indication of starting a food hub here in Salmon Arm. This is all good.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the motion. If you could record your vote, please. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll move on. Business council statements. Councillors, if anyone has a statement, please indicate. Councillor Lindgren, yes, please, you're first.
Thank you. Just a couple of updates from the committees. So I met with the SABNIS committee. We had a socially distant outdoor face-to-face meeting out in Sunnybury, and they made some decisions about how to move forward and whether or not to open the nature center this year. So they are moving forward with finding out what the work safe regulations will be and setting up some ways to protect the 2 students that have been hired to work there. The students won't be working in the same place at the same time. One will be out on the trails and one will be manning the center, but at this time they probably will not be allowing customers or vacationers, tourists into the center, but trying to set up displays outside with hand washing stations and appropriate furniture placement so that people can't approach the kids that are working there. So that's moving forward, hopefully for June 1st is what they're aiming for. And the other committee, I'm drawing a blank suddenly, that's bizarre. Fall Fair Committee, sorry. As you know, made the decision to cancel the fair for this week and to keep their Fall Fair coordinator employed, working on innovative ideas for next year's fair in case we are still under COVID restrictions of some kind.
Thank you, and thank you for your work on that board. And I know it's a difficult decision for the fair, but given the over 50 restriction, I think it was the right decision.
Yeah,
appreciate
it was a difficult choice for you to make. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wallace-Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. I wanted to report on the District Arts Council meetings, which I have managed to attend. They also had to make the difficult decision to cancel WOW, as we have now heard. However, they are proceeding with plans for the Pride awareness project scheduled sometime for the fall. May or may not be online. We'll have to see. And I also attended the Chamber AGM. They have the same president, or their vice president is now their president, and they have elected 3 new young board members. So that's very good news to hear. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor Wallace-Richmond. Councillor Lavery.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I'll just update on the Okanagan Regional Library and the plans given the phase-in project. So the board will meet next week. We'll be presented with an overall phased-in plan, but the key emphasis is on phased in. It's anticipated that staff will start returning to the branches ideally later this week. The regional library will follow provincial sectoral guidelines. Those are still being crafted, but they will parallel what is being done in the rest of the province. There's no doubt in the thinking that it's not a return to normal, but what exactly the new normal is in the process of being determined, and I'll report back when we know that.
Great, thank you, Councillor Lavery. That's a challenging one, I know, with the book resources, especially in an indoor facility. Thank you for that report. We look forward to hearing more. Any other councillors have statements? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. We will go down to other business, which is our last piece of business, I think. Under other business, we have a motion somewhere. I guess
I was going to move.
Oh, there it is. So this is a release from our in-camera meeting. I'll just ask CAO if he would read both of these motions for us, and then I will allow councillors to make comments.
Sure. The first one, Your Worship, is moved by Councillor Cannon, seconded by Councillor Flynn, that Council authorize the safe reopening of city-owned buildings / properties and hard surface courts, including the skateboard park, tennis, basketball, pickleball, tennis club, RJ Haney Heritage Village, Salmon Arm Heart Center, Horseshoe Club, and lawn bowling to the public in accordance with the Provincial Health Officer's guidelines effective May 15th, 2020. And the second, Your Worship, is moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Wallace-Richmond, that Council authorize the reopening of all city-owned playgrounds and spray parks effective May 15th, 2020.
Great, thank you. And just for process sake, we don't need re-motions, CAO. These ones are stand and we can just talk about them.
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Eliason, did you wish to comment on these, Councillor Eliason?
Thanks.
Wish to count on Councillor Flynn? Did you wish to comment on either of these? Okay, Councillor Wallace-Richmond.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. I think it's important to say that by choosing that date and talking about city-owned facilities, our expectation is not that the doors swing open first order of business on May 15th. This merely gives groups the opportunity to consider it and to do it in a way that they see fit. However, the city-owned facilities will indeed, work will begin to get them going again. It's important clarification, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace-Richmond. Appreciate that. That is important. Councillor Lavery.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And I just want to, I support the overall decision. I was opposed in our very rigorous conversation on that. It was not opposing in, it was about timeline and phasing in, but I do have complete confidence that the public will recognize they've been educated in terms of their approach to this. It's been an amazing response, and that Salmon Arm will indeed pull us off in a responsible way.
Great, thank you, Councillor Lavery, for that comment. Is there any other comments from councillors? Okay, I'll just make a comment as well then, and appreciate Councillor Wallace Richmond's comments that, of course, we are still under the umbrella of the Provincial Health Officer and the Provincial Health Ministry, who I think have done a very good job of helping local governments work through this difficult time. We know that the BC Restart Plan, Phase 2, starts on May the 15th, mid-May. And that's why we have chosen that date for these openings. Included in Phase 2 are museums, art galleries, and libraries. And as Councillor Wallace Richmond has said, Haney and the art gallery are on this item, and it will be up to their boards and up to their staffs when and if they are comfortable and decide to open. We are just saying to them that given the situation now, if they do decide to open, following the guidelines while they're on city property, we would authorize that opening. As far as the other hardcourt surfaces go, Dr. Bonnie Henry has always, throughout this whole process, has said to us, get outside, get outside. And it's what she has said recently, as well as Dr. Tams, is that the actual spreading of the virus outdoors is much less likely than indoors. And I think that's why Phase 2 of the provincial restart plan includes mostly outdoor type facilities. One of the other items is childcare. And so it's interesting because there's an outdoor component to that as well. Things like lawn bowling and the horseshoe club and the tennis club, they will come up with protocols, I'm sure, themselves for their members, as will other clubs that are involved here. I think over the last 9 weeks, the residents of Salmon Arm, as Councillor Lavery said, have done a fantastic job, and I think we learned a lot. And what I expect to happen is that when our residents go out to these places, that they're going to social distance, that they're going to bring their own sanitation with them, and they will look after themselves, which is the whole idea the provincial government has asked us. The second item, maybe there's differing opinions, I'm sure, regarding the authorization of opening playgrounds and spray parks. I have every confidence in the families in Salmon Arm, especially those with small children, that they will, when they go to the park, will take every precaution that they can in order to have their children play safely. And I expect that we're not going to see a huge crowd at the parks because everybody might not be ready to go there yet, and that's okay. We will certainly have signage at all of these parks about social distancing, just as we do on our trail system. So it's a slow move back, but I think it's a move that the residents of Salmon Arm are ready for. So look forward to seeing those openings on. Councillor Flynn, yes, you may make a comment.
Yeah, sorry, Your Worship. I changed my mind after listening to people and thinking about my role as economic development representative and being involved in those weekly task force calls regarding the economy and in the whole Shuswap region. I think it's really important to note that in general, obviously the province of BC, the Shuswap and Salmon Arm residents, citizens, and businesses have been very good at planking the curve, and we're in pretty good shape. That's clear from Dr. Bonnie Henry, and this plan, four-phase plan, shows that they're going slow. My comment is related to how good a job we've done in Salmon Arm with businesses that chose to close even though they didn't have to. Obviously, businesses that were told to close did, and slowly those businesses are going to open up. I trust that everybody will continue, as you've said and Councillor Lavery said, to follow social distancing and support local and do it in a positive manner and follow provincial guidelines. So I supported both motions, although with some consideration to one of them. And I think that this is the right thing to do. And I just ask that people understand that the province is guiding us from a health point of view, and we're following their leadership. And I suspect our citizens will social distance like you've stated.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Any other comments by councillors? Okay, so for the those of you who are on this call that are not a part of council, I'm going to ask council for a motion to go in camera, because we have one more item, small item, not related to this in any way, that we needed to close off. Is there someone that would make that motion, please? Councillor Cannon moves that we move in camera. Councillor Lindgren seconds. If you're opposed to that motion, please indicate. Seeing none, I'm just going to turn off my camera.
This conference will now be recorded.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Moved by Councillor Lavery, seconded by Councillor Cannon, that the regular council meeting of May 11th, 2020 be adjourned.
Is there anyone opposed?